In 1968, Alpine Village was opened in Torrance to cater to the German community, and for a while it was a staple of the South Bay. In fact, it's commemorated in a mural on the wall of the local Carl's Jr. So what happened? Today we'll look at the rise and fall of Alpine Village on PCZ TV. PCZ TV. To understand Alpine Village, let's take a larger historical look at the German community in the U.S. Over 7 million Germans emigrated to the U.S. between 1800 and 1914, making them one of the largest immigrant groups in American history. Driven by economic hardship, political unrest, and religious freedom, they settled heavily in the Midwest's German Belt, which is a rough area defined by states running from Pennsylvania to Wisconsin, Minnesota, Missouri, Ohio. Oh, and also they emigrated to some locations in Texas. The image of those with German roots changed abruptly upon the outbreak of the First World War. All of a sudden, they came under pressure to cast off their ethnic identity. And the full-blown anti-German hysteria meant that the German language and culture were ostracized. It didn't help that President Woodrow Wilson spoke disapprovingly of hyphenated Americans, whose loyalty he claimed was divided. Then, just prior to the Second World War, another immigrant wave came, this time those fleeing Nazi Germany. For this new wave, they avoided the previous settled areas, which is why the Pacific Palisades in California became a hub for German exiles, specifically via Aurora. And as many of the early emigres from Germany to the Palisades were people of the film industry, like Ernst Lubitsch and Fritz Lang, they came to LA and became prominent Hollywood directors and participants. But what really killed the hyphen was the Second World War. Again, no one wanted to be associated with Germany, especially the Nazis. Thus, despite being a major immigrant group, they sort of disappeared into the melting pot that was unique among all major immigrant groups. They worked to blend in and integrate ASAP. Now, after the Second World War, another new wave of German immigrants came. These included the fiancés and wives of American soldiers who had been stationed in Germany, as well as an increasing number of academics and highly qualified professionals. Between 1951 and 1960 alone, roughly 580,000 Germans immigrated. Key programs, such as the Displaced Persons Act of 1948, enabled this influx, with many settling throughout the U.S., and again, avoiding the German Belt. These newer immigrants often settled at urban industrial or technical hubs rather than forming new rural colonies. And that's where the South Bay came in. Post-World War II German immigration to the Los Angeles South Bay was characterized by specialized professionals, engineers, and families in aerospace and manufacturing. They were drawn to the South Bay by aerospace jobs in areas like El Segundo, Long Beach, and Torrance. So now we understand the German diaspora, and that leads us to the roots of Alpine Village in Torrance. It began as a collaboration between two German immigrants, Joseph Bischoff and Johann Hans Rotha, who came to the U.S. in the 50s. Both, ironically, initially earned a living by buying properties to renovate and resell. The fundamental inspiration for Alpine Village came from a trip to Solvang, California, which was noted for its Danish architecture and heritage. So they concepted a German heritage site that would cater to the South Bay German-American presence. It consisted of a number of small shops, a chapel, a market, restaurants, and banquet halls. In fact, in the day, it hosted concerts. And of course, it hosted its own Oktoberfest. and it featured a flea market on weekends. And for many years, Alpine Village did well. But not all was well with the founders' partnership, because Joseph Bischoff and Hans Rotter decided to split. Now, wanting to have spaces to both live and work in the same place, Joseph split with Alpine Village to found Old World Village in 1978 down south in Huntington Beach. It features shops, restaurants, chapels, and a hotel. In fact, many of the proprietors of the businesses live above their establishments. Meanwhile, remember the rapid integration of German Americans into American culture? Well, combine that with the older generation just starting to age out, and demand for an authentic Bavarian town just sort of starts to fade. And the traffic and sales in Alpine Village declined. And in the latter years, it was Oktoberfest and the flea market which really helped keep them afloat. But then came COVID. Effectively, that was the last nail in the coffin. In 2023, Alpine Village was sold for $43 million, after which the longtime shops received notices that the property had been sold to a new owner and all store leases were expiring. And the Alpine Village swap meet, which had been held on the site's parking lot 6 days a week for decades, was permanently closed in February of 2023. Game over. So what came next to the site? Well, a nonprofit preservation group, Los Angeles Conservancy, petitioned the county to designate Alpine Village a historical landmark because of its unique Bavarian-themed shopping. And in September of 2020, it was officially designated as an LA County Historic Site. However, a historic site designation does not ultimately protect the site from demolition. According to guidance from the LA Conservancy, it merely buys time in order to create opportunities for preservation solutions to emerge. And as it sits now, 3 years later, it's all just empty Bavarian buildings and an empty parking lot. Not sure what the new owners were thinking by kicking out all the businesses in the swap meet and then just sitting on empty land. I can't imagine they have any ROI. I also can't imagine it being restarted. All in all, it's just a pity. But Old World, down in Huntington Beach, is still there, and I suppose you could say that the two properties are related, so the spirit of Alpine Village lives on. FYI, if you've enjoyed this slice of South Bay history, take a gander at some of my other South Bay videos, and if you've been watching this far, I thank you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and now, most importantly, my disclaimers.